We're all friends here, meeting under the banner of basketball tonight. The governor had other things to do tonight, and I respect the fact that the other thing he had to do was a basketball game. But I don't have anything else to do tonight. As a matter of fact, I would have canceled everything I had to do tonight in order to share this evening with you. There is no place in the world I would rather be than in this building celebrating this event. I'm going to be introducing some people to you, but really they are the kind of people that don't need some anchorman to introduce them. They've been introduced to you over and over and over again if you're fans of this wonderful game. And I work in a business that has afforded me over the years the opportunity to introduce kings and presidents and senators and prime ministers. And I have on those occasions done so, and I felt unflappable in those occasions because those people touched the man in me. But tonight I'm going to be introducing you to people, and I am starstruck tonight. I am just in awe because the people that I'm going to introduce you to are people who touched the boy in me. I am in love tonight with this game of basketball, and I am in love with the people who play it, and who coach it, and who watch it, and who love it. That means all of us here tonight. I would like to introduce to you the honored head table guests. I would like to begin with Joe Hutton Jr., a four-time letter winner in basketball at Hamline. Joe was chosen to the All-Conference team 3 times, and in LA, he was chosen to the All-Tournament team in 1949 and 1950. At the 1949 NAIB tournament in Kansas City, he was chosen to the All-American team as Hamline won its 2nd national championship. Joe went on to play professional basketball for the Lakers before becoming a head coach at schools in the Minneapolis school system. And he was inducted into the Hamline University Athletic Hall of Fame in 1972. Joe is here tonight with his wife, Millie, and there are other Huttons in the audience who would like to stand when we recognize all of them. Son Tom, Barbara Hutton-Keenan, and Catherine Gabrielson, who could not be here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Hutton Jr. and family. Next person I'd like to introduce to you is someone who I would introduce with a term that's been made popular by America's poet laureate Maya Angelou, who has coined the term shero. The person I'm about to introduce next is my shero in the game of basketball. She now goes by the name of Janet Carvenin Montgomery. But when she was only Janet Carvenin, she spent the better part of her life playing and promoting the game of basketball while taking her hometown of New York Mills to 3 consecutive state championships. She scored more points than anybody else in the history of the high school basketball game in the state of Minnesota with 3,129, and is still the highest point total ever achieved by a girl in the state of Minnesota. She was first team Parade All-America, National High School Player of the Year in 1980, and her collegiate career took her to 2 separate Final Four appearances for Louisiana Tech and Old Dominion. And she was inducted into the National High School Hall of Fame in 1987. And 1989 was the youngest athlete ever inducted into the Minnesota Sports Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Janet Carvin Montgomery. The next person I'd like to introduce is the embodiment of basketball in these parts. John Kundla, in 1947, named the head coach of the newly formed Minneapolis Lakers. Holding this position for 12 years, winning 6 professional championships, 1 in the National Basketball League, 1 in the Basketball Association of America, 4 in the NBA. Kundla's career record with the Lakers, 466 and 319. His teams featured 5 future Hall of Famers: George Mikan, Jim Pollard, Slater Martin, Elgin Baylor, and Clyde Lovella. A native of Star Junction, Pennsylvania, Kundla played collegiately at the University of Minnesota for 3 seasons, and he is currently on the induction ballot to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. And he's here tonight with his wife, Marie. Ladies and gentlemen, John Kundla. George Mikan is known as the first dominant big man in pro basketball, as well as pro basketball's first superstar. This 3-time All-America, that's 1944, 45, and 46, led the nation in scoring in 45 and 46 while playing for DePaul, and was voted the greatest player in the first half century of the game of basketball by the Associated Press. He won his first professional championship in 1947 with the Chicago American Gears at the NBL. He went on to win 4 championships with the Minneapolis Lakers. Mikan led the Lakers in scoring 3 times. He played in the first 4 All-Star games. George Mikan is a charter member of the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, inducted in the 1959. George Mikan. I'll be saying something about John Wooden in just a few minutes. And I would like to also introduce the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts, also seated here at the table, Dean Jerry Greiner. Dean. See, I just want to get these names straight here. Let's see. We've introduced Hutton, Kundla, Mikan, Harvinen, Wooden. Okay, that my 5 takes your 5. For all the money in the world. My mom, who passed away a year and a half ago, when I was being raised up in Muncie, Indiana, said that she believed in my early years that one day I would stand with the greatest names in basketball. Yeah, I know you meant something else, Mom, but here I am. I'd like to introduce a few more people, and I'd like them to stand at their tables. 5 of the 7 Hamline University basketball players who went on to play professionally in the NBA are here tonight. Howie Schultz and Hal Haskins, so we're not able to attend tonight. But here, and if you'll hold your applause until we get them all standing, I would like to introduce them one by one. Jim Fritchie, Hamline class of 1953, who played with the Baltimore Bullets. Vern Mickelson, Hamline class of 49, who of course played with the Minneapolis Lakers. John Norlander, Hamline class of 1943, who played for the Washington Capitals. For all Charlie Seltz, Hamline class of 1946, who played for the St. Paul Lights, the Anderson, Indiana Packers, and the Waterloo, Iowa Hawks. And, of course, Joe Hudden Jr., Hamline class of 1950, who played for the Minneapolis Lakers. Would you all stand, guys, and let us give you a round of applause. Also would like to remind you that we are trying to put together some funds from tonight's banquet, and we have the silent auction, and all of those items will still be up for bid throughout the rest of the evening. And if you intend to bid on them, would you make your way quietly during the remainder of this program to spend as much money as you possibly can reasonably on these items, so that we can continue to call this evening the great success that it has started out to be. We are here to celebrate the game of basketball, which I have come to believe is not simply a sport, but is perhaps one of the finest metaphors for life that you can think of. A lot of people believe that in the sports writing world, that baseball is the perfect metaphor for life, but I believe basketball more fairly fits that image. I believe, and I believe a lot of you know, that the fundamental rules of the game of basketball equate directly to the fundamental rules of leading a good life. I think all of us who have been blessed by the game of basketball find ourselves living by some of those rules and living decently as a result of it. 100 years ago, the first intercollegiate men's basketball game was played just less than a block from where we're standing tonight. Who would have thought that it would grow into the game that it has today? We are, of course, celebrating tonight the men's achievement. But I hasten to add, and it is made apparent by the wonderful women athletes who are in our audience tonight, as well as the presence of Janet Carvin and Montgomery, that it is a celebration of the game. It is not a celebration of men's achievement, but a celebration of the game of basketball. Those of you who understand the direction from which I come know that I am a supporter of women's basketball as well as men's basketball, and I come to that honestly. I was not born an enlightened man. I was a man who was blessed with 3 daughters. And when I once tried to promote women's basketball, Sid Hartman one time pointed out to me on the radio that he thought he got me. He said, the only reason that you support women's basketball is because you got daughters. And I said, that's right, Sid. And he said, see, I do it. I do it. Ladies and gentlemen, Sid Hartman, I get it. I get it. I also have pointed out in the past to people who say, I don't like women's basketball, I just like men's basketball. I try to remind them that maybe they're not fans of basketball at all, because it is the game. And I know that is true because I played 24 years of basketball and was never ejected from any game. But I coached 1 year of 7th grade girls basketball and was kicked out of 7 basketball games. You can get excited about watching 7th grade girls play basketball, I guarantee you. It doesn't matter who's playing this game, and I'm serious about that, whether it's girls or boys or men or women or high school kids or college athletes or professional players, or whether you're watching people in wheelchairs play the game, which we see at halftime now in some of the great professional contests. Wheelchair basketball, playing on the backs of donkeys, it doesn't make any difference. It is the game of basketball that we're here to celebrate. And I am very pleased to have been asked to be a part of it. we have moved, and we want to thank Target stores for providing those centerpieces, those high-top shoes that were out here, and we removed them because we're going to be staging a bit of a video for you so that you can see it. And immediately following the video will be the presentation by Coach John Wooden. So what I would like to do now, direct your attention to the video screens around the room and enjoy the next few minutes as we go through the history of this fabulous game of basketball.
You couldn't find a better place to celebrate 100 years of college basketball than Hamline University, where it all started. In Science Hall on February 9th, 1895, the first men's intercollegiate game was played. Hamline graduate Ray Kane, a member of Naismith's original team, organized this historic event. And the tradition continued. 50 years later, Hamline teams under legendary coach Joe Hutton saw NAIA tournament play 12 times and won the championship 3 times. 7 Hutton men went on to play pro ball, including Raleigh Seltz, Howie Schultz, John Norlander, Vern Mickelson, Joe Hutton Jr., Hal Haskins, and Jim Fritchie. On behalf of all Hamline basketball greats, past, present, and future, we invite you to enjoy this Hall of Fame review of the legends of college basketball.
If Dr. James Naismith were to see his sport today played by more than 18 million people in backyards, playgrounds, and the world's greatest sporting arenas, he undoubtedly would have smiled with pride at the game he simply called basketball. The little man ruled the early years of college basketball, for it was a different game then. The primary offensive weapons were dashing guards and 5-foot 8-inch shooters who would fire away with their two-handed set shots. There was also the weave. Teams would pass it around until one player finally broke free toward the basket. One of the greatest small men in the history of the game was Purdue guard Johnny Wooden. A 3-time All-American in the early 1930s, he was a master dribbler and playmaker. Under the guidance of head coach Ward Piggy Lambert, the tough, aggressive Wooden bounced off the floor so often that people called him the Indiana Rubber Man. In 1936, Hank Lucetti of Stanford shocked basketball fans across the country with the introduction of his running one-handed shot. Many coaches called his unorthodox style of shooting freakish and fundamentally unsound. They were sure it would never last. Lucetti averaged 22 points per game, an amazing figure when you consider he played in an era where there was a time-consuming jump ball after every basket. In the early days of college basketball, the center was simply the player in the pivot position. It wasn't until the mid-1940s that fans got their first good look at players of such physical stature that the center would forever be called the big man. DePaul's George Mikan and Oklahoma A&M's Bob Curlin both hovered over 6 feet 10 inches. They were eager to prove that tall players could play the game, if not with grace, at least with guile and power. After watching Curlin and Mikan in action, coaches around the country realized the sport had seen its future. They called him the Big O, and no one had ever seen a player quite like Oscar Robertson. In the late 1950s, the 6-foot 5-inch Cincinnati Bearcat sensation ruled the game of college basketball. Robertson became the first person ever to collect 3 consecutive Player of the Year awards. Oscar Robertson provided college basketball with a new standard of individual excellence. He concluded his brilliant career averaging more than 33 points and 15 rebounds per game. The Big O truly revolutionized the guard position and forever secured his place in the history of the game. Bill Russell of the University of San Francisco was such an overpowering player that the NCAA devised a plan to handicap him. In 1955, the free throw lane was widened to 12 feet, and in 1956, the guiding of errant shots into the basket was prohibited. These changes didn't faze the multifaceted Russell, whose left-handed shots continued to burn the nets. But Russell's real magic came on the other end of the floor, where he earned a reputation as a ferocious shot blocker. Bill Russell raised his game to an efficient science, where psychology and reputation counted almost as much as his exceptional ability. When you talk about pure shooters, you talk about Purdue's Rick Mount. He was a legend while still in high school in Lebanon, Indiana, earning the state's Mr. Basketball title. At Purdue, he became one of the greatest shooters college fans had ever seen. In the winter of 1964, the whole country was talking about Lou Alcindor, a 7-foot-tall New York schoolboy. Alcindor, now known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, turned down more than 100 college scholarship offers, settling on UCLA. Beginning in 1966, with Alcindor in the middle, the Bruins won 88 games and lost only 2. He was simply unstoppable. Defenses tried everything to slow him down. Rules were even changed to outlaw the dunk, but Alcindor just continued to excel, earning 2 Player of the Year honors. When the curtain finally closed on the Alcindor era, UCLA had become the first school in history to collect 3 consecutive national championships. At the center of it all was one of the greatest players the game had ever seen, Lou Alcindor. For 3 years, Bill Bradley made Princeton one of the top college teams in America. Rare for an Ivy League squad. A Rhodes Scholar, Bradley was brilliant both on and off the court. In 1965, Bradley carried the underdog Tigers to the Final Four. Although Princeton ran out of miracles, Bill Bradley was named tournament MVP as he scored 58 points in the consolation game against Wichita State. At 6 feet 11 inches, an extremely mobile Bill Walton was everything UCLA coach John Wooden expected in a big man. With teammates Keith Wilkes, Greg Lee, Larry Farmer, and Henry Bibby, the Walton gang was invincible, going 2.5 years and 88 consecutive games without losing. In the 1973 NCAA final against Memphis State, Bill Walton played the greatest offensive game in Final Four history, scoring 44 points and hitting on 21 of 22 field goal attempts. Bill Walton capped his brilliant career at UCLA by winning 3 consecutive Player of the Year honors. With a 42-inch vertical leap, North Carolina State's David Thompson took the game of basketball to new levels. In 1974, Thompson averaged almost 30 points a game as he led the Wolfpack attack to a national championship. Aside from his incredible leaping ability, Thompson also had a soft touch from the outside. When heralded Larry Bird first came to Indiana State in 1978, the skeptics claimed he couldn't run, jump, or succeed against quality competition. The skeptics were wrong. Bird finished his career as the 9th leading scorer in college basketball history, averaging over 30 points per game. At times it seemed Larry Bird was simply unstoppable. College basketball took a quantum leap forward with the emergence of Michigan State's Earvin Magic Johnson in 1979. Never before had the game seen a 6'9" guard who could control a game quite like Magic. He had the quickness of a guard, the grace of a forward, and the power of a center. Magic led the Spartans to the national championship in '79 with a victory over Larry Bird and Indiana State.
There's a steal by Doherty. Here comes Michael Jordan. Matt Doherty passes to Jordan. I guess that is a pretty fitting end to the ballgame. Jordan, look at that! Kenny Smith looking for Jordan. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
In 1949, John Wooden accepted the head coaching position at UCLA and set about the task of turning Westwood into a winner. Despite some early successes, Wooden did not immediately bring national prominence to UCLA. In fact, it took 13 seasons before the Bruins made their first trip to the Final Four. Over the next 12 years, his teams won an incredible 10 national championships. And over those years, he coached some of college basketball's greatest players.
As great as your career was, do you ever reflect and say, you know, I could have been better, I could have been even better?
No, there's no question. You never reach your full potential, but you certainly can make the effort to reach your full potential. And you know, there's no such thing as an overachiever. I often hear coaches say he overachieved. No one ever did more than they're capable of doing. We're all underachievers to different degrees. We're not perfect, we're all imperfect.
Nearly 20 years after his retirement, they still call him coach, a tribute to a man who was much more than a coach. He still refers to himself as a teacher. He's a father, a philosopher, a friend. He was and is a man of high ideals. Coach Wooden's famed pyramid defines success as having peace of mind and the self-satisfaction that you've done the best you can do. And to this day, John Wooden continues to live by those ideals.
I'm not what I ought to be. I'm not what I want to be. I'm not what I'm going to be. But I am thankful I'm better than I used to be.
In preparing an introduction for a man like John Wooden, I was very happy to know that this videotape was going to be prepared that would, in effect, do the job for me. So I'm indebted to the people at Hamline for that. I have just a few small things to add. One, again, I'm quoting my mother, one of the great basketball fans in Indiana. John played high school basketball in Indiana as well as for Purdue. And there is a discussion that goes on in households and is going on at this very moment in households throughout Indiana right now as people sit around their television sets or fires or their dinner tables. And the conversation is like this. The child asks the parent, who is the greatest high school basketball player you ever saw play? And I, of course, asked that of my mother. And her answer, the very first name I ever heard about the game of basketball when asked about that, she said the greatest high school basketball player I ever saw play was Johnny Wooden. She had seen Robertson and McGinnis and Mount. She had seen the greatest high school ball players in Indiana. She had seen Bird play. She had seen 5 state championships come out from a building about 20 yards from her front door. But she said the greatest high school basketball player I ever saw was Johnny Wooden. 1928. In preparing for this evening, I made only one effort to talk to anyone who had any knowledge about Johnny Wooden, and I talked to Bill Walton. And I asked him if he could tell me something that I could tell you about Coach Wooden. He said, yeah, I can tell you something about Coach Wooden that the crowd ought to hear. Tell that crowd that we love him. Every one of us love him. And tell that crowd, Walton said, that they should know that Coach Wooden never won a basketball game for himself. He won every one of those games for us. Bill Walton. The man I'm about to introduce is too humble to ever have said this of himself. He, in fact, is too humble, ladies and gentlemen, to, I believe, have spent 1 minute even thinking this about himself. Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest coach in the history of collegiate basketball, Coach John Wooden.
Thank you very much. Well, lest I fail to follow proper protocol and not acknowledge someone that shouldn't be acknowledged in their proper order, or fail to forget someone that I should, I'll merely say, ladies and gentlemen, and presume that that will include all those present. I appreciate a very kind introduction, but we all know when someone is introduced, it seems that they always feel they must say nice things. It doesn't make much difference whether they're true or not. Most of you don't know the difference, and I don't think any great harm is done as a general rule, as long as the person being introduced at least attempts to keep things in proper perspective. I've told this a number of times, which is true. Something that has helped me keep things in a little better perspective than I might have otherwise. When I was discharged from the service in January of 1946, the end of World War II, I resumed a teaching position at a high school in South Bend, Indiana, where I had been prior to my enlistment in 1942. In the spring of '46, I was invited to a neighboring city, Elkhart, to speak at a dinner that they held annually, in which they honored anyone within the school system that had received any particular recognition during that particular school year. And do you know, in 1971, 25 years later, they still recalled that. And I know they did, because the Elkhart Daily Truth is the custom of the daily papers, certainly in the smaller communities in Indiana. We'll have something in there every day under the heading of 1 year ago today, 5 years ago today, 10 years ago today, and under 25 years ago, this little item appeared. Elkhart school officials announced today that John Wooden, English teacher coach from South Bend Central High School, would be the principal speaker at their recognition dinner, although they had hoped to get a prominent person. Kind of helps you to keep things in better balance or in proper perspective. Since being here and talking to some people prior to coming, I've had a number of suggestions made to me about the remarks that I should make this evening, and so I'm going to try to give you a mixture of it and maybe get a little bit of all. First of all, I want to express my thanks to the people of Hamline for inviting me. I know you couldn't find anybody older. And since it is dwelling on 100 years of basketball, I guess it's logical. So, but a wonderful job that the various people involved have done to make this a very fine occasion. I think they all are to be highly commended. When I entered the teaching profession, I found myself a little bit disillusioned, somewhat disappointed, not completely surprised at what seemed to be expected of the students in my English classes and from the teacher. Parents expected an A or a B, in spite of the fact that a C is the average grade and most of us are average. And they seemed to feel that that was quite appropriate for the neighbors' children, of course, but their own, no. Now, the good Lord in his infinite wisdom didn't create us equal as far as intelligence is concerned anymore. We are as far as appearance, as far as size. We're not born in the same environments. We do not all have the same opportunities. Not everybody can earn an A or B. I didn't like that way of judging, any more than I like the way of judging athletic teams. You alumni, I suspect, tend to judge your teams by the winning percentage. And if they win them all, I suspect you feel that they're reasonably successful. I know that to be true somewhat. At UCLA, I did have 4 different years where we never lost a game. But we didn't win each game by the margin that some of our alumni had predicted. And quite frequently, I had the feeling that they'd backed up their predictions in a more materialistic manner. I'll never forget the last game I ever coached against the University of Kentucky for the national championship in 1975, and one of UCLA's most illustrious alumnus, extremely wealthy individual, donates heavily to every area of the university. Got an excellent seat, you know, excellent. And the game is no more than over till he's down on the floor. He had his arms around me and he said, "We did it. We did it. You let us down last year, but we sure got them this year." And I couldn't complain. We didn't win the championship the year before. We did go to the Final Four. We did lose to the champion in double overtime. I thought they were a decent team. They lost only 1 game the entire season. Of course, they did lose it to us, and that's the problem. We won the wrong one. You'd be surprised how many times I've been reminded of that. Prior to that, we had won 7 in succession, 9 out of the previous. But he wasn't talking about those. He was talking about last year. I guess I understood that, and that didn't bother me. And I was fortunate, too, that my dear late wife, whose husband never made the type of money that enabled her to donate heavily to all these areas. Her seat's not as good. Took her longer to get down on the floor, and she didn't hear his remark, and thus he's still a friend. Now, they was Irish through and through. That would sort of indicate that. Well, anyway, I didn't like that, and I wanted to come up with something that I hoped would make me a better teacher and give the youngsters under my supervision something to which to aspire, other than just a higher mark in the classroom or more points in some athletic contest. We all want success, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. We should. But what is success? Is it winning games? Is it a position of power or prestige? Is it the accumulation of material possessions? Mr. Webster might indicate that. Certainly could be, maybe is, but not necessarily so in my opinion. So I started working on my own particular definition. I like to make up definitions. I like to coin words, definitions for words. And as a result of something that Dad had tried to get across to me on the farm in southern Indiana, to me and my 3 brothers, is you should never try to be better than someone else. Sounds kind of funny, I suspect, to many of you. Never try to be better than someone else. But he didn't stop there. He said, learn from others and never cease trying to be the best you can be. I'm sure when Dad brought that out, my age, that I didn't think too much of it. I'm probably like some of you will remember in one of Shakespeare's immortal tragedies, Polonius is speaking to his son Laertes, and Laertes is leaving home, and Dad, you know, wants to give him some fatherly advice. He knows it's probably in one ear and out the other, but he still feels he should do that. And he tells him, you know, some lines, neither a borrower nor a lender be. Own of loses wealth but sin, borrowing does the help, does the edge of husbandry. This above all to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night to day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Well, I probably didn't think too much of it, but years later, I guess somewhere in the hidden recesses of the mind, a part of it did take hold. Then I ran across something else about this time. A little verse. I love poetry. I dabble in it. The little verse said, at God's footstool to confess, a poor soul knelt and bowed his head. I failed, he cried. The master said, thou didst thy best. That is success. I think probably from those three things helped me coin my definition of success. I think success is peace of mind, which can be attained only through self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort to become the best of which you're capable. And you're the only one that will know that. You can fool everyone else, but you can't fool yourself. It's like reputation and character. Your character is what you are, and you're the only one who truly knows. Others might have perceived certain things, and that will be your reputation. But you're the only one who truly knows what you are. After coming up with that, and I won't spend too much time on this now, getting into a couple other things, because the fact it was rather abject, something you can't see, it wasn't having the desired effect. And I wanted to come up with something you could see, and I got the idea of a pyramid and started building on a pyramid, which I worked on for the next 14 years. I had different blocks. I had as the cornerstones, and if any building is to have any real strength or solidity, it must have a strong foundation, and of course the foundation is anchored by the cornerstones. Industriousness and enthusiasm. You have to work hard, and you have to enjoy what you're doing. If you're going to come close to your potential, you might do well in the eyes of others, but it might not be near your potential if you're not working hard, and you're not enjoying what you're doing. Between those things forming the foundation, I have friendship, loyalty, and cooperation. You have to be friendly. You have to work at friendship, just as you have to work at marriage. It's two-sided. It's not one-sided. Some years ago, I spoke in San Francisco at an IBM convention, and a college classmate came up to me after and said, Johnny, people in California certainly aren't friendly, like they are back home in Indiana, are they? And I said, what do you mean, Bob? I said, coming over here this morning, met a lot of people, not a single person spoke to me. That would never have happened back in Indianapolis. I said, did you speak to them? He said, I didn't know any of them. Well, obviously, if we wait till the other person to speak, no one's going to speak. You have to work at friendship. To make friends, make friendship flourish. You have to be loyal. You have to have someone to whom you must be loyal. You have to have something to which you must be loyal. You have to be cooperative. The smaller this world gets, because modern science and technology makes the world smaller, makes cooperation more necessary. We must have self-control, because when emotions take over, we can't function well physically or mentally. We can't make good decisions. We can't do many things if emotions take over that's near our level of competency. We have to be alert and alive and observing constantly, because there's something going around all about us all the time from which we can learn. My favorite American, Abraham Lincoln, said he never met a person from whom he didn't learn something, although most of the time it was something not to do. Well, that's learning. That's learning, but we have to be alert and alive. Then we have to have initiative. We must not be afraid to fail. We are imperfect, and we are going to fail on occasions, but failure to act, when action is needed, is the worst failure of all. We have to have initiative. Act with reason. Act according to the information that we've accumulated in the past in regard to this particular situation. But act when it's needed. Then we have to have intentness. Intentness might very well be determination. It might be perseverance. It might be persistence. We can't give up when things are tough. They say, when I look back, it seems to me all the grief that had to be left me when the pain was o'er, stronger than I was before. We get stronger through adversity. Weight programs make us physically stronger. Increasingly difficult problems in school make us mentally stronger. Facing certain moral situations make us morally and spiritually stronger. We get stronger through adversity. We shouldn't fear it. We should welcome it. Then we must be conditioned physically, mentally, emotionally, morally. We must be able to execute not only properly but quickly. I had some basketball players that were great shooters, but they weren't quick and couldn't get any shots. Didn't help us. I had some others get all sorts of shots. Couldn't shoot, but they could sure get the shots. That didn't help us either. You have to be able to do things not only properly but quickly, and you have to work together. You have to work together for the common goal. And when we're not working together, the team effort is not going to be nearly as successful as it should be, regardless of the individual ability of those involved. These things will help give us poise and confidence. Poise, of course, is just being yourself. You're not acting, you're not pretending, you're not trying to be something you're not. When you have poise, you do what you're capable of doing. And you must have confidence. You must believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, you can't very well expect others to believe in you. These things will make you competitive. They'll make you enjoy it when it's difficult. You won't be afraid of a difficult task. You'll enjoy it. You'll look forward to it. Those are the greatest pleasures. There is no great joy or satisfaction or pleasure to be derived from doing the very simple, ordinary things that anybody else can do. And yet most of the things that you and I do and have to do in our daily lives are relatively simple, and most others could do them. And whatever we're doing, it should be done to the very best of our ability, but the simple things won't give you the joy and the satisfaction, the pleasure you get out of being involved in some difficult task. So the competitor enjoys it when it's that way. Then we must have patience, and we must have faith. We must have faith that things will work out as they should, providing we do what we should. And we must have patience, realizing that good things take time, that things that come too easily usually aren't very lasting, aren't too meaningful, not too worthwhile. Patience we must have. These things will help bring us that peace of mind without which we don't have much. After a while, that helped me, I think, become a better teacher as I began to embrace it myself. But when I graduated from a small country grade school, three-room grade school in Indiana, Dad gave me a little card with a little verse on one side which said, 4 things a man must learn to do if he would make his life more true: to think without confusion clearly, to love his fellow man sincerely, to act from honest motives purely, to trust in God and heaven securely. And then on the other side was a 7-point creed, and he said, try to live up to these, son. One was be true to yourself. Another one was help others. Another one was make each day your masterpiece. Another one was make friendship a fine art. Another one was drink deeply from good books, especially one. Another one was build a shelter against a rainy day. And I don't think he's thinking of an earthly shelter. And the last was give thanks for your blessings and pray for guidance each and every day. Creed, he said, to try to live by. I wish I could say I've lived by it, but I can say I've tried. So those things, I could talk at length on that pyramid, and I could talk at length on that creed, but I thought I'd just touch those briefly and say how I think they've been meaningful to me. They've helped me become a better teacher than I might have been otherwise. And if I'm a better teacher, then I've helped others. And there's no greater satisfaction in helping another. I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson that said, it's a beautiful compensation of life that one cannot sincerely help another without being helped themselves. I think it's true. They say you can't live a perfect day without doing something for another, without any thought of something in return. It's been said that the three things that mankind crave most: happiness, freedom, and peace can never be attained and retained without giving them to someone else. I believe those are true. Some weeks ago, I received an honor that is one of the nicest honors that I've received, connected with the Disney Teachers Award. And feeling that's all a coach is, a teacher, I received an award at this teacher's affair in honor of the late president of Disney, who was killed in a plane crash, helicopter crash less than a year ago. But in my acceptance, I quoted something that one of my friends here hoped that I would give. I hadn't thought of this and didn't intend to, but I will. And incidentally, Gary, somebody else asked me to do the same thing, so I will. In the mid-1930s, shortly after the beginning of my teaching career, I ran across in the NEA Journal a poem written by a lady entitled, "They Ask Me Why I Teach." And she replied in this manner after a while: "They ask me why I teach, and I reply, where could I find such splendid company? There sits a statesman, strong, unbiased, wise, another later Webster, silver-tongued. A builder sits beside him. Upward rise the arches of that church he builds, wherein that minister may speak the word of God and lead a stumbling soul to touch the Christ. And there a doctor, whose quick steady hand may mend a bone or stem the lifeblood's flow. And all about a gathering of teachers, laborers, nurses, farmers, those who work and vote, build, and plan and pray into a great tomorrow. And I say, I may not hear the word, or see the church, or eat the food their hands may grow, and yet again I may. And later I may say, I knew him once, and he was weak, or strong, or bold, or proud, or gay. I knew him once, but then he was a boy. They ask me why I teach, and I reply, where could I find such splendid company? I'm glad that I chose the profession I did as a teacher. I'm glad I had the opportunity to learn from young men, and we learned from others, and I think I learned as much from others as I was able to impart to them. I've said that I probably learned more from one player I had than any other single player, and that player you know now as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I knew him as Louis Alcindor. I learned from him a great deal about man's inhumanity to man, things that I never dreamed of before. I saw so many remarks made about his height by unthinking people. I heard racial remarks made at him. I saw he couldn't go in a store buy clothes like most of us can. I saw he was difficult in planes, almost always had to be on aisle. I saw at tables how he'd have to sit on the end and get all turned around like George has to do over here. I saw, didn't have a lot of the king-size bed, I mean the real extra long beds then, which they have, I think most of them now. Now they would get a king-size and cut a corner across, or sometimes we couldn't get that and put chairs and pillows down at the end to make it longer. I saw many things of this sort, which I had no realization prior to that time. I learned from him. I learned things from others too. And I think that the profession that I chose gave me an opportunity probably to get closer with those under my supervision than I might have in most any other profession. Just in the classroom, I didn't get as close to my English students, and believe me, I didn't flunk them all. I wouldn't get as close to them as I would get to the athletes because I'm dealing with them emotionally, mentally, and physically. We're in the classroom emotionally to some extent and mentally. So you do have the opportunity to get closer. And I'm grateful that my path led in the direction that to become a teacher. I had gone to Purdue University originally to become a civil engineer. I wanted to build bridges, roads, and things. Circumstances didn't enable me to do that. If they'd been athletic scholarships in my day, that's where I ended up. Or my folks who had financial means, that's where I ended up. But I had to work in the summertime. I couldn't go to civil camps. So I ended up, and I'm glad it ended up that way. If it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have had this wonderful opportunity to be with you wonderful people here this evening, helping celebrate 100 years of the game that has meant so much to me in all my life, or most of my life. I will close with one little story that came up a little while ago. A few years ago, I believe it was 5, the Final Four was held in Indianapolis. I haven't been to a Final Four since I lost my wife. We went to some 36 in a row together. But I did go for special reasons back in Indianapolis. I went out to see a friend that I'd known for many years, Tony Hinkle. Some of you, I'm sure, here know of him. He was a tremendous coach in all sports. He was ailing, and I went out with a man from Indianapolis who's the guru of Indiana basketball. And this was the year that a player that many of you, I'm sure, were familiar with, Damon Bailey, had graduated from high school and was going to Indiana University. And on the way, this guru in Indiana asked me if I'd like to go out and see Mr. Hinkle, and I said, oh, I'd love to. And so he picked me up. He's on the committee, the chairman of the committee that for many, many years has selected, they have an all-time Indiana high school basketball team, an all-Indiana all-time college basketball team. For many years, the guards on this Indiana team had been myself and Oscar Robertson. We're going out to see Tony, and on the way back, he said to me, have you seen Damon Bailey play? And I said, yes, I have. Saw him in the McDonald's All-Star game. He said, he's really good, isn't he? And I said, yes, he's tremendous. He said, you know he's the all-time Indiana high school leading scorer? And I said, yes. Yes. He said, he's really good, isn't he? And I said, oh, he's very good. Yes, he's very good. He said, how tall are you? Well, I said, I'm about 5'10". Well, he said, he's 6'4". Did you know that? And I said, yes, I knew he said, he's really good, isn't he? And I said, oh, yes, he's very, you know, he said the committee was thinking, you know, you have to revise things every now and then. And I said, yes, I know. And he said, well, the committee is thinking we may have to revise our all-time high school team. And I said, I wouldn't do that. And he said, well, why? And I said, Oscar will be unhappy. Thank you very much.
Hear me. I came here tonight with one regret, and I conclude this evening with two. The first regret is a long-standing one, 30 years or more. First regret is that I was never good enough as a basketball player to ever come to the attention of Coach Johnny Wooden, to be coached by him. Tonight, a new and deeper regret, more profoundly felt, Coach, occurs to me, that I never had the good fortune to sit in your classroom and be taught by you. My part concludes with the reading of a letter that we have here. Excuse me. The letter says, "Greetings to all of those celebrating the 100th anniversary year of college basketball. As one among millions of Americans who share a love for the game, I'm happy to commend all of those whose sportsmanship and dedication to excellence have helped to define college basketball since the first men's game in 1895. Since that original contest between Hamline University and the University of Minnesota School of Agriculture, players and loyal fans alike have looked forward to basketball, a chance to renew age-old rivalries and traditions. The dramas that unfold on courts across the country every year are an integral part of American culture. And I applaud all of you for your role in preserving and advancing this great legacy. Best wishes for another century of success." The return address on this is 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, from the President of the United States, Bill Clinton. Profound thanks to you for including me in tonight's event. And now I return you to the President of Hamline. President.
Thank you very much, Don Shelby, for hosting what I hope you found to be a wonderfully warm event. We have heard tonight from one of this country's finest teacher coaches. And to bring this issue close to home, this university stands for that kind of teaching. And for 34 years, this university was blessed with the leadership of a teacher coach of the stripe and integrity and skill of Coach Wood. That person was Joe Hutton Sr. And in part, this 100th celebration of the game is also a posthumous celebration of the gifts that Coach Joe Hutton gave to this university, to his students, and to his basketball players, many of whom are here tonight. I have been asked in conclusion for those of you who bid on the silent auction to stay near the tables, and it will be decided then who were the winners of those auctions. It's a real pleasure to have all of you on the Hamline University campus tonight to celebrate this great game and to hear from one in the person of Coach Wood. Thank you and good night.